Hey everybody, it's episode 188 of the Author Stories podcast. I'm your host, Hank Garner. You know you can always find all of the archives of the show over at hankgarner.com. This is episode 188, going into summer today. My kids are home for the first day of summer vacation, so I know a lot of you are going on summer vacation out there and going to the beach and looking for some good beach reads. I hope that you will use Author Stories to make some of those reading decisions this summer. You know, with this many episodes, I really try to keep a diverse roster of guests that I have on, something for everybody, and I hope you find something that entertains you and that you learn something. That's the goal of the show, to connect you with writers that you like, and for the writer in each and every one of us, the storyteller in us, I hope that you get some nuggets of wisdom to help you along your path. Also, when you're looking for those beach reads this summer, I would like to tell you about our sponsors this week. I'm really excited that I have a roster of sponsors that are also writers that believe in the show and want to sponsor, but also know that this is a great place to get their work out to a big and diverse audience of listeners. I would like to tell you about Armand Rosamilia. Armand is a fantastic writer. He's a great guy. He's a friend of mine. Podcaster. Super excited to have him as a sponsor of the show. His book, Keyport Cthulhu, is written by him, and he's also got some stories co-written by his daughter, Caitlin Rosamilia, and also Chuck Buda. Armand and Chuck have a podcast that is fantastic. Posted about it on Facebook yesterday, and we had a little fun with it, but it's called the Mondo Method Podcast, and if the writers out there that are looking for some tips to get started in writing and publishing, it's a fantastic podcast to listen to. So go check it out. The thing that I love about Keyport Cthulhu is, it's set in this New Jersey fishing village of Keyport. The esoteric order of Dagon has been planning for the awakening of the Deep One all these years. Who can survive when Cthulhu rises? It's also got some bonus stories that are a ton of fun. Cthulhu-nicorn, I stumble over that every time, is co-written with Armand's daughter, Caitlin, and it is worth the price of the book all by itself. Also, Lovecraftian Tales from author Chuck Buda is included. Terrible Old Man of Keyport and Dark Waters of Sin. You'll love it. Go pick up Keyport Cthulhu and support my buddy Armand Rosamilia. He deserves your support. Also, Patricia Gilliam, she's our guest on today's show, and we're going to talk all about her books. So be sure to click on the link in the show notes to support her work and pick up what she's got going on. Ed Gosney is a fantastic writer. You need to pick up his books. He has been on the show a while back when we had a show talking mostly about comics and also kind of how those things have affected us and our writing. Ed Gosney is a fantastic writer. He's a fantastic guy, and he has a blog called Cool Comics in My Collection, where each week he highlights some of this wonderful art form that's been going on for like 75 years in America. And go check it out. You'll learn something, you'll be entertained, and go support Ed. My friend Stefan Boltz has his book Six String, is doing wonderfully right now. It's a fantastic tale of a young girl who goes on a journey of self-discovery, and it really is a fantastic book. I think you'll like it. There's a link in the show notes. Go pick up a copy of Six String by Stefan Boltz. Nick Breaker returns as a sponsor to the show. His book series, Galactic Satori Chronicles, is some of the best sci-fi that you'll ever read. He and his co-author were on the show a while back. There's a link where you can find that. If you're looking for really cutting-edge science fiction that really takes the genre in new and exciting places, pick up Galactic Satori Chronicles. Thank you, Nick, for sponsoring the show. As always, Richard Gleaves has an audio clip at the end of the show. Please stick around to listen to it. As I've told you before, the Jason Crane series is one of my favorite things that's come out in the last several years. And listen to the audio clip. I think you'll see why I love it, and I think you'll love it too. Stick around for a clip from Draft to Digital. Thank you to all of our sponsors. And hang on just a minute. We'll have our interview with Patricia Gilliam. As always, thanks for listening.
Hey there, Author Story listeners. This is Kevin Tomlinson from Draft to Digital, and I know that you have a book sitting there just waiting to get out to the world, and you're kind of wondering what the next steps are. So that's why you need to go visit drafttodigital.com/authorstories. That's draft, the number 2 digital, drafttodigital.com/authorstories. And that's where you're going to find all the help you need to go from having a book on your hard drive to having it on someone's Kindle or iPad or other reading device. So go visit drafttodigital.com/authorstories right now.
Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have a friend of mine, Patricia Gilliam, on the show. Patricia is a fantastic science fiction author, and I think you're going to really love her. Welcome to the show, Patricia.
Thank you, Hank. Thank you for having me on the show. I've been a fan for a really long time.
Oh, I love hearing that. That's it still blows my mind that people like this thing that I do, but I'm so happy that that you do. Because you're a fan, that I begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or a storyteller?
I was about 4 years old, and my parents used to keep copy paper around just for my brother and I to doodle on. And I started making little copy paper books. And I think one of them was called Butterfly and the other was Flower.
Of course.
I think the plot was kind of given away in the title. And,
no burying the lead there, huh?
And I think I was going for an epic trilogy, but got interrupted by kindergarten.
Oh, man. Kindergarten has been the downfall of many a creative person. But I love your accent. Where are you from?
I grew up in East Tennessee, kind of around the Kingsport, Bristol area. And we live here in Knoxville now, which is not too far away. It's about 2 hours away.
Yeah, you're not too far from me. I think we're about 4 or 5 hours away. I love it. God's country.
Mm-hmm. My husband's trying to convince us to eventually go to Texas, and I might go with him on that.
What part of Texas would you go to?
I don't know yet. He's actually, where he was doing trucking, he actually got to see the whole state basically while he was working. I have never been, but it looks really beautiful.
That's awesome. You said that your parents left paper for you and your siblings to doodle on. Did they encourage creativity in y'all, or was this something to keep you busy and keep you quiet?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Our house, I have a younger brother. His name is Chris, and we both, just growing up, my parents took us to the library. We went to a lot of actually bluegrass concerts over in Virginia. And so they tried to keep us exposed to a lot of just different types of art and music. And I really enjoyed that growing up.
Love it. My dad was one of the was on the board of directors of this country music festival, and it's kind of evolved into a roots music festival. It's kind of the new term people like to use, but it's it's country music and American music or Americana or whatever. And in the town I'm from is the same town that Jimmy Rogers was from, and he's been called the father of country music. Yeah. And so every year we have this Jimmy Rogers festival, and it used to be this really elaborate week-long thing with 4 or 5 major acts every night. And when I was a little kid, because he was on the board of directors, my sister and I got to hang out backstage.
Oh, that's cool.
And it took place in this old Gothic theater in our town, this beautiful, beautiful theater that we didn't know to appreciate at the time. But when we were little kids, we would sit backstage, and I would hang out with all of these musicians and songwriters, and I was too young to have any real appreciation for it. And I think back now to sitting, I ate supper with Ronnie Millsap one time, and we talked, and I had no idea who he was. And he talked about writing songs and stuff like that. And I just, those little things really stick out in my mind. Those, there's not one, creative thing that dominates, what comes out later. But I love that you had some of those same experiences, and some of those music festivals really light a fire in a writer's mind early on.
I was telling Kevin Summers about this. I got to meet June Carter Cash when I was 12, and I didn't know who she was. And,
Oh my gosh,
that
that's
was
amazing.
just a really cool experience looking back on it, and I had no idea at the time.
Oh, that's so cool. The things we would give to go back and relive when we had better sense. You know?
Exactly.
So besides those copy paper books that you made, when did you decide that you were going to keep pursuing this? I'm assuming that you said your mom took you to the library a lot, that you were a pretty avid reader?
Yeah, that I would max out. I think it was 12 books they would let you check out at a time. And so I would max out, and then the next week get another 12 and another 12, and so.
What kind of stuff were you reading?
Actually, more like there was the Choose Your Own Adventure books when I was really young, and then there were. As I got older, I got more into like the mystery and thriller novels. I started reading sci-fi when I got older. But I started out just kind of more of the real fast-paced reads that you could get through in about a day or two is what I started out with.
Right. What got you interested in sci-fi?
A lot of it, I have my dad's aunt. She worked for Kennedy Space Center back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And she had me interested in more of the actual science. She gave me the addresses of all the facilities. And so when I was about probably 10, 11, 12, I just started writing them just for information. And I would get these big inch-thick envelopes in the mail. And some of the time it was just like stickers and autographs. And then sometimes I think that there was an office worker. It's like, here, have a tech manual and stuffed it in the envelope. But I thought all of it was fun. And
how cool!
And at one point, I was like, okay, I thought by now that being an astronaut would just be a typical thing in 2017.
Right. I'm really jealous of my kids sometimes because if they want to look up something about the space program, they can literally just go to nasa.gov.
And it's all there.
And they can it's all there and they can dig through and, answer questions. But man, there was something about having a curiosity and sitting down and writing a letter and then waiting to see what might show up in the mailbox. That is so cool.
And, I didn't think about it at the time, but they actually sent the original letter that I sent them. They would send that back. And at the time as a kid, I'm like, why are they sending me my own letter back? And then now as an adult, I'm like, wow, I see why they did that now.
Yeah. Oh man, how cool. So she kind of lit a spark in you for science and for to kind of open the door to think about space and things like that. At what point did you start imagining those kind of stories for your own?
And I think part of it too, I was a big fan of sci-fi television too growing up. So on the television side of it, when we got cable, when Sci-Fi Channel first came out, I just kind of devoured all of the old Twilight Zone shows, a lot of Rod Serling stuff. I thought that was amazing.
Oh yeah,
just the writing involved on there.
Oh yeah, and there was really tight storytelling. When you don't have a lot of special effects, the story really shines through. That's awesome. Do you remember first getting into science fiction books? What were some of the first ones that you got into?
As an adult, I read Wool by Hugh Howey, and that kind of got me interested in science fiction again. And that's how I kind of found Michael Bunker. I've read some of your work, and I liked it, and I thought that's awesome.
So, when you read Wool, were you thinking about writing at the time?
I had an idea. The Hannaria series was basically something I had as an idea for a television show. And being in this area, it's like, well, I don't have the means to be able to do something like that now, but what if I wrote it in kind of a novel format and maybe developed it later on? And that was kind of the start to that.
That's awesome. Hugh has been kind of single-handedly responsible for not only kickstarting a lot of people's love of science fiction again, but also opening that door to let people know that there's an avenue that you can get your work out there. Thanks, Hugh, if you're listening.
And I had tried different types of self-publishing before. It was mainly a long time. I think they're still around. There was a site called lulu.com. And basically you would sell people the PDF of your book, which you could about imagine how the formatting on those would look.
Oh,
But that the whole industry has changed, of course, with Amazon Kindle, and I'm on Apple iTunes now, and just different sites, and how much of that is spread, even just over the past 10 years, how much things have changed. It amazes me.
Yeah, well, people forget that there had been ebooks long before there was a Kindle, but man, were they a pain to read.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you said, you could get a PDF of a book, and after sitting and staring at your computer, and there's CRT monitors at the time, glare, and God, you had to really, really want to read that book to read it that way. And then the Kindle came along and solved so many problems. But yeah, that. So what were you publishing then? Was it the Hannaria series?
It was mainly short stories, but a lot of the characters in that I ended up incorporating into it later. I had an idea probably about 2 or 3 years into it. It's like, what if all these characters are in the same universe? And how all of that would work. And so I had almost puzzle pieces of it. And just had the idea of, okay, what would happen if all of this was together? And I had done a few things with some of the early characters, and I ended up kind of pulling it later because of just changes that I made, and I didn't want people to be confused on kind of the direction that I went with it later.
Right. So what was the genesis for this story? So the Hannaria series, for those of you that are not familiar, so far you've written 5 books in the series. Where did the idea for the story come from? And then kind of tell us the setup. What's the story about? Sure.
Originally, it was actually a short story prompt on a site called writing.com. And basically, I had a character, a little alien kid who was having to be forced to Earth for an ambassador position that he didn't want. And at the time, I was like, okay, well, what if this guy grows up and he actually starts to care about Earth almost more than his own people, and how all of that would work? And so that was just kind of the genesis of the idea. And then eventually when I started doing the novels, I kind of went a little bit further ahead in the timeline where Gernard, the main character, is an adult. And kind of the 2 kids, Alex and Rika, they're kind of seeing things at different angles of how the world is now. And so that way you get different viewpoints of the same situation.
Gotcha. Where did the idea for Hannaria come from? This is another world. Where did what were you envisioning when you dreamt up this new world?
Originally, it's like, okay, what if there was a planet or a society where you basically inherit your career from your family or from your parents? So basically, it was just the setup of, okay, you're kind of forced to do something whether you want to or not, and how people would deal with that.
Gotcha. So from there, did you realize that this was going to be such a long-running series?
No, not originally. I was thinking that it was just going to be kind of a one-off short story.
Right.
I got feedback where people kind of wanted to know what happens next, and so I just kind of kept going with it. And I had tried to do novel-length books before, and I'm a discovery writer, so a lot of times I would get to about maybe the 12,000-word mark and just kind of write myself into a corner. And I did that several times, and eventually got to the point where I just started doing research on basically how to solve that problem. And read a lot of Orson Scott Card's guides, and there's another really good book. It's Saul Stein's Stein on Writing, and both of those books kind of helped me kind of get past that roadblock and kind of look at the bigger picture on doing the story arcs and the character arcs.
Right. I think a lot of people have that same experience that you have, I saw someone post on Facebook the other day, something to the effect, and I forget who it was. Maybe it's Meg Jensen. Anyway, they said, I just wrote my character into a corner, and I love this because now I get to see what they're going to do. And I appreciate that, that sense of, hey, this is a challenge that I can meet. But sometimes it's really scary. You write yourself into a corner and you're like, I just have no idea what to do now. So what did you learn from those books that helped you, that when you get to that point to work them out of that corner, or maybe to never get them in the corner in the first place?
For me, what I found that my problem was the planning on the front end. I wasn't doing that enough. Getting the characters really well developed, and you can get it to the point where it's more character driven. The better you know your characters, the more you're going to know what they're going to do when they get into that corner.
Right.
And so doing a lot more planning on the front end helped me.
See, I think this is something that people get confused, and I don't even really like those labels anymore, discovery writer or pantser or outliner, because I find that just so rarely a person is one or the other.
It's a spectrum almost of, and you really can move on that, because I think I went from probably being more on the fly to putting more planning into it, so I've kind of moved more in that direction because it helped me. And what helped me might not necessarily help someone else. They may, you could probably be on the opposite end of planning too much to where you take all the fun out of it. And you have to kind of find your middle ground on where you're actually enjoying the process of it. Right.
Well, I've had this conversation with Kevin Summers before, where he talks about that he used to be a meticulous outliner, but his problem was that he would outline and never write, because he would just keep messing with the outline and just keep working it until he had just completely killed the story. There was no life left in it because it was so outlined. And he says, now I just discovery write. Well, I think I find it hard to believe that Kevin just sits down and has no idea where the story's going, and he just types one word at a time, because I know how his brain works. So there's, even those of us that are pantsered, and I still put myself in that camp more than not. I am a discovery writer, but I almost always know where the story's going. I don't just drop a random character into the middle of a room and find out what he does. I've got an idea of a plot. I've got an idea where the story's going. And a lot of times I even know the resolution. I just don't know how I'm going to get them to the resolution. So talk a little bit about your, because you said you're a discovery writer, but now you plan stuff out on the front end. How do you rectify those two things?
Part of it is what you just talked about, knowing the resolution ahead of time and almost working your way backwards to where it's like, okay, I know I need to hit these certain points, but it still gives you the freedom to kind of bounce between them. So that way you have an arc in place, but you still you get to have fun with it. And sometimes you just kind of have the happy accident thing of, okay, this would be cool. And it ends up working out, but it keeps you on track, I believe. Just having at least a basic framework that you can go off of.
Right. You talked about knowing your characters. What kind of planning do you do for those characters to then get ready to put them in situations and see what they do?
When I was in college, I took a few television writing classes, and I kind of got to see, as far as when you're setting up a series, how detailed that they got in their character profiles, and I thought that was really interesting, just because that way you have kind of like the consistency in their personality and their backstory. And a lot of this with writing novels, probably 90% of it, you won't even see in the books. But as an author, you having that foundation there, it kind of gives you a little bit more to draw off of as you're guiding the character through the arc.
Gotcha. You tell your story, the Hannaria stories, through two viewpoint characters, through Alex and Rika. How did you set that up, and was it difficult kind of going from one head to the other?
The way that I set up book one is I actually wrote each part separately. I did Rika's part first, and then I did Alex, and it wasn't a literal shuffling, but that's how I see it in my head as far as just you had two complete stories there, and then in the revision process, I was kind of lining up the timeline so that way you were kind of tracking in real time, but bouncing back and forth between the viewpoint of each character.
Gotcha. Was that when you finished writing the first viewpoint and then worked on the other? Was the second one easier because you kind of had an idea where the story was going?
Yeah, that helped a lot because I knew kind of the main points that I needed to hit, and then with Alex's part, I was able to fill in the stuff that Rika would not see. And between the two of them, it was kind of fitting the whole story together.
Right. You said that this started as a short story and that you had trouble in the past taking the short piece and taking it longer, because you get to that 12,000 word mark and just kind of run out of gas. Well, you not only broke that barrier, but then you turned this into a series. I love that this starts as a short story. Now it's five books.
And I'm working on the ending books, the last three at the same time. So it's going to be. Oh gosh.
That's nuts. I wrote this, I've told the story before, but I wrote Writer's Block, last year as a short story to kind of cleanse my palate before going on to do something else. And then that story turned into, five stories that turned into a thing that kind of took on a life of its own. And I never imagined that from the very beginning. I left it open-ended at the end because I like to leave things open-ended. And to me, it was all the resolution I needed. I was satisfied. I was, I didn't need to know what happened next. And then
people wanting more.
Right. And then you're like, well, crap, I don't know, let me go think about it, let me go ask Stu what he's gonna do next. And, but I could never, I kind of closed the door at the end of that book and there's not gonna be another one, but I could not imagine taking something that started as a little kernel of an idea and then stretching that over 5 books. So my question is, there is a question coming. My question is, when you took that short story to novel length, did you know that there was going to be more story at the end of that first novel?
Yeah. By the time that I got to the end of it, I'm like, oh, I could do this forever. Right. And part of it, I think, is that television element to it of things running for multiple series, and just falling in love with the characters and working with that. And it's one of those things I think, is it Jim Butcher? He's on book 22 with Dresden, something like that. So, I mean, it's one of those things I'll probably do other projects, but, this is probably going to be one that I'm just going to stick with.
Right. Do you think science fiction and fantasy too, are easier to do that with because you're kind of creating worlds out of whole cloth and you make the rules? So, there's kind of, when you create a whole new world, there's kind of endless opportunities of a whole world's history that you can tell.
Right. And it grows with you. As I've, gotten older, I've looked back at previous drafts and it's like, it's changing along with me. And I thought that's kind of neat of just starting off with, in book 1, the characters are kids and just getting more sophisticated with the setting and the characters. And it's kind of grown with me.
Right. Do you notice yourself maturing as a writer as you look through those old drafts? Because I love that you said that, because I keep, I'm pretty neurotic about keeping copies and copies and copies of things as they evolve. And I look back at some of the very first things that I wrote and, I can see how stories have changed, like you said, but I can also tell how I have changed. And that's, maybe those aren't things that you share with everybody else, but, that's part of my story, and I love that you can see that.
And speaking for myself, sometimes I have to keep myself from cringing for a few minutes and then, and then dive in.
Of course. Right. If you didn't, then you wouldn't be a growing writer, I think. Yeah. You talked about, those TV writing courses and how you think that way now when writing. What is it that you can learn from that to, like, what tools do you use, to keep a story, continuing? But as we all know, every good TV show, each episode needs to have a small resolution. There needs to be some sort of satisfaction there, while leaving it open-ended enough that you want to tune in again next week. And then at the end of the series, there needs to be another resolution, so that it's a satisfactory ending, while also making you want to tune in next season. Are there any tips there that you've learned that you could pass on to other folks that maybe things that writers can look for to work into their stories?
I think a big thing is just kind of like what you're talking about, the having that cycle of setup and payoff. A lot of shows, Lost, I love the earlier season of it, but they had a lot of setup, and then of course when you get closer to the end, the payoffs became less and less, because it was almost the ratio of setups and cool things and different paths that things could take, that you have to have kind of that in mind when you go in, of if I'm going to have something here, I need to have the resolution to it too, for everything to come together correctly. And with novels, that's part of the reason why I'm working on 3 books at once, just because of the scale of it. Writing them linearly, I may miss something, and so that's the reason why I'm wanting to go ahead and do the ending as far as the writing portion of it all at the same time. And I'll probably release them all at the same time too, just so that way everything kind of works out.
Right. As your books progress through the series, your viewpoint characters change. How are you moving the major story forward while telling these individual stories and kind of weaving them in and out?
A lot of it depends on when I was going in. It's I would pick the 2 to 3 main characters where sorry, my phone rang. Sorry about that. Picking I would pick the main characters that were needed to tell the story, and then just doing the breakdown of the relationships, and a lot of times in the later books, how the fun ways that they could interact because of how they see the world. If you have 2 people that see it differently, you're going to have a lot more fun with it, because they're especially if they're both looking at the same situation.
Right, and you can tell that meta story from different angles by choosing different viewpoint characters, which is always fun to kind of get a fresh set of eyes, and the different characters notice different things about the world.
Yeah, and getting to add their personality to it, and I think that's kind of the fun aspect to it.
Right. But you don't only work on the Hannaria series. You are also an avid short story writer. That even though you've got this massive series that you're working on, you obviously still have a love of short stories. What are some of the most fun short stories that you've done lately?
In 2014, I got to be involved with the Future Chronicles with Samuel Peralta. It was on the Immortality Chronicles. That was a blast. That was a lot of fun. Isn't
Sam just the best?
He is awesome.
Yes, he is. He is a gem in the writers community. That's for sure.
And the short story for it was called The Backup, and I got to do a little bit more with almost a Tony Stark-esque character, and had all the it was basically a mystery with a assassination by robot.
Wow. That's kind of cool. You also wrote a Kindle Worlds story for Hugh Howey's world, didn't you?
Yeah, it's called Thaw, and it's kind of parallels Shift in a lot of ways. I picked a character. He was the doctor who created the cryogenic system, and how Thurman kind of drew him into the project without fully knowing what was going on. He was under the impression that his part of it was to help people, and just kind of how that unravels of how he figures out what's actually going on and tries to stop it but fails.
Gotcha. You also have submitted a story for an anthology that I'm a part of as well, and it's this new superhero anthology, which is so much fun, and so many great writers are a part of it. It's going to be coming out soon. We'll talk about it on the show when it comes out. But that subject matter is a little different from the stuff that you normally write. How did you approach it? And can you tell us anything about your story without giving away too much?
Sure. It's actually connected in with the Hannaria Series novels. I thought
cool.
I thought it was kind of a fun way to do something that I couldn't probably do a full length novel of it, but it was a kind of a fun little offshoot of it. And not to give too much of it away, but there is a character that is trying to stop a bombing. And in the process of it, the bomb goes off, and she has amnesia, so she doesn't know quite what's going on, and is found. And over time, they realize, okay, you have a whole lot of knowledge of this, and almost going more toward the direction of thinking that she may have been the person who said it. But and I can't do too much farther without giving away the ending.
Right. As a writer, amnesia is a really fun trope to work with, because you can do so many things where a character's almost innocent, but the whole rest of the world knows things about them they don't even know about themselves. That's a fun thing to play with. Patricia, where can people find you online if they want to connect with your work, if they are maybe not familiar with you? The fun thing about discovering a new author that has a big series like you do is you can start at the beginning, and so much satisfaction that you can keep reading those books. But where can people find you?
I'm about on every platform that I can find. Of course, Amazon, of course, Barnes and Noble, Apple iBooks, Kobo, Google Play. I'm probably floating around on a few pirate sites.
Whatever you got to do to get eyeballs on your work. We say that jokingly. It's kind of a thorn in the side of writers, but whatever. Awesome. And your website is patriciagilliam.com,
Yes.
right? Awesome. Patricia, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Hank. I appreciate it, and thank you for all that you do.
Thanks for listening. Now stay tuned for an audio clip from Richard Gleaves. Find a link in the show notes.
Didn't your dad teach you not to trespass? Yeah. Sorry, I'll go. Joey stepped forward, but Hedwig remained motionless, blocking the only exit. No. Someone needs to learn a lesson about respecting other people's property. Joey felt unnerved and panicky. Please, Hedwig. Mr. Van Brunt. Please, Mr. Van Brunt. May I go now? Please? Not such a smart-ass now, are you? His voice grew flat and contemptuous. You little bastards think you run the world. But you have no idea. No idea where your food comes from, what your parents have to go through to put clothes on your back. Humiliating jobs, long hours, going gray, to provide for you. What are you talking about? Life. Real life. You think it's easy, don't you? Don't you? Those stupid adults doing their stupid adult things while you play all day. Well, it's hard. You hear me? It's hard. Joey's breath caught. He knew what Hedwig was capable of. What did you do to Jason? Nothing. Where is he then? Jason's run away from home. I don't believe you. I don't care what you believe. I'm the adult. I ask the questions. What did you do to my son? To Zeph? Is Zeph okay? No, he's not. Zeph is not okay. And it was you, wasn't it? You're the one who did it. Who did what? Who twisted his mind. I haven't done anything to Zeph. Don't lie to me! Hedwig raised a hand, and a fireball blossomed there. Joey had never seen Hedwig's gift before. The man held a piece of hell. His face looked like something carved from driftwood, full of cracks and crevices. His eyes were shadowed and vacant, but glittering with flame, like knotholes full of fireflies. Yeah, someone's mind had twisted, but not Zeph's. Hedwig's gone batshit. Hedwig passed the fireball from one hand to the other. Did Zeph send you for his things? I know you know where he is. He said he was in love with you. Hedwig made it sound as if Zeph had confessed to murder. Is that true? I don't know. Hedwig broke into a wide grin. Well, we can find out, can't we? He's a Pynchon, right? A Pynchon would know. Know what? You're not making sense. It's their gift. The Pynchon gift. My son's a Pynchon, like his whore of a mother. And Pynchons are telepaths. They always know when the people they love are in danger. Joey's eyes had gone wide. He blinked, trying to process the information. Zeph had a gift? For sure? They have a psychic alarm. If you hurt someone they love, they come running. He raised the fireball. So let's find out. Let's find out if Zeph really loves you. Let's see if he's a fag or not. I know he's not. You'll see. He won't feel a thing when I do it. When you do what? When I burn you black. Joey went cold. Hedwig meant it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Author Stories podcast. You can find new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.